Right, hello everyone. Welcome to another IT Career Talk with IT professionals. And today we have a VP Engineering. And our special guest is Jesse Panganiban. Jess, can you greet
Hello,
our
everyone.
audience? So Jess, thank you for being here. No? Can you describe to us your current role? What is a VP of Engineering or VP Engineering?
A VP of Engineer. Thanks for having me, Raf. So I'm gonna describe what I do. So yung role ko po is VP Engineering. So I'm in charge of everything around engineering. So that's about engineering strategy, more of like how we do things, overseeing development. So ano yung nangyayari, progress, system infrastructure, and system architecture. And finally, engineering operations, like are we operating optimally? So nakapag-push ba sila ng code quickly? Nabablock ba sila frequently? O those things. So that's what I think VP engineer should be doing. Mostly on the engineering operation side of things.
Great answer. No? And if I can ask, do you is VP Engineering very similar to a CTO, or you think it's slightly different?
Um, hmm. It depends on the organization. So in our case, wala kaming CTO. So I'm sort of like half playing that role. Um, but usually they're very different. Like a CTO usually thinks about technical strategy. Like if you would imagine Docker, for example, parang yung CTO nila is the one dictating the direction of Docker, the product itself. So ganun yung CTO, like Ruby on Rails, like that's DHH, right, of Basecamp. VP of engineering is more of like someone who focuses on the day-to-day aspects of things. Like, are we hiring the right people? Are we, alam mo, like engineering operations natin in check? Are people unblocked with their tasks? So, technology and operations. So, ganun yung difference nila.
Right. No? Thanks for clarifying that. No? As VP of Engineering or VP Engineering, do you code? Um, and if you do, what is the usual stack, or at least what's your stack?
Right, sige. I love talking about tech stack. So, in our company sa Bukas, we're using Python and Django for the backend and expo.io for the front end. So expo.io is a basically React Native that allows you to build websites as well. So basically React. Yun yung tech stack namin. In terms of coding, medyo hindi na recently, truthfully. I still code sometimes, parang what a refactor ng code or major features. Pero most often, hindi na. So, mas pinapasok sa engineers yung responsibility. Well, not passing. Like, they're more like they're taking the responsibility of coding the feature. So, I'm left with nothing.
Right. And so, if you don't actively code, do you do the code review, or are you more in the infrastructure? Where do you spend most of your day then?
Right. I usually do weekly one-on-ones with the lead engineers of each squad. After that, I do code reviews. But I think yung most critical piece ng ginagawa ko in our organization is to talk to the stakeholders. So the way we operate is we're not just facing customers and end users of or borrowers of Bukas, pero meron din kaming internal operations who also uses our systems like loan operations, collections, disbursements, those teams. So kinakausap ko rin sila and try to understand what their needs are and how can we better help them. So I think yun yung critical piece of what I do. Gathering of information. I still do code reviews, pero we have a culture of that. So it's not just me who does code reviews, but everyone on the team.
So I hear that basically you also interface with, you do a lot of interface with other departments, no? Who need IT guidance. So it's both, you spend a lot of internal guidance to other non-IT departments then.
Mm.
Correct.
More like, not really IT guidance, more like I try to understand what they need. And it's not just usually just me, but also I do it along with the product team. So sumasama ako sa meeting sila so that I can also get a more direct perspective on what's happening.
Right. Okay. Got it. So let's go back a little bit on understanding how you became a VP engineering of Bukas. No? Was this something that you aimed for when you were in high school or college, or how did you even start choosing this career? No.
Oh man, let's go back, way back. So
Way
yung
back,
dad ko,
yeah.
man.
Oh, dad.
Dad
Okay.
ko, father ko, mechanical engineer siya. Pero, nagkaroon siya ng interest in computers. So, back in the 90s, nag-start siya ng internet cafe.
Oh,
And that's how I got exposed to the internet, like Cartoon Network, alam mo yun, Yahoo Ligans, those things. And one day he showed me, anak, check this out, I have my own website. So he uploaded his first website on GeoCities.
GeoCities, naalala ko pa yan.
Diba? So, I guess yun, parang nagkaroon ng interest with websites, but at the same time, yung research din, yung pag-consume ko ng internet, medyo naging intense. Kasi, remember those days when Game Boy was a thing? So yung, since yung parents ko, they're anti-games, yung alternative ko to that is to get Game Boy emulators and download ROMs online. So medyo naging intense on researching those things. So I guess yun yung first foray ko into computers. So yung parents ko parang na-notice na, ito si Jessie, pang computer to. I also did some sidelines, mga 8 years old o 9 years old. Nagre-reformat ako ng computer and people would pay me about like 500 pesos just to reformat their computer.
Wow.
Pero like,
side hustle,
Side hustle. Diskette pa to, tapos magdo-DOS ako, reformat using command line. Tapos install Windows 98. So, yun yung sideline ko at the time. So, computers, medyo na-enjoy ko siya talaga. Fast forward, college, so I've been doing websites. Na-discover ko yung Joomla, WordPress, Drupal, so PHP. Okay, so, ito pala yun. How do I deploy this? So, humiram mo ng credit card sa dad ko. Tapos, I got this like 3-year plan with on Bluehost. Tapos, that got me my first domain name, thejpanganiban.net. Tapos, okay, so SFTP upload, ganyan. Oh, this is how you work with PHP. This is how you work with Joomla. This is how you work with WordPress. So, I learned that nung college, mga second year. So, I really enjoyed that part.
Grabe yung commitment, 3 years agad yung binili na hosting. Hindi man lang 1 year, 3 years agad.
Laki ng discount, man. So, di ba? So, I think parang if you buy it month and month, parang $8 ata siya per month. But if you buy it for 3 years, parang $200 lang siya or something. So, you're saving a lot. So, you're saving a lot of money. So, yun. So, na-experience ko. So, I built my first news website with WordPress. Mga 3rd year, 4th year college ako. Hindi siya original idea. I actually got it from my peers, my friends. So, parang at the time, 2007, 2008, 2009 to, nung nasa college ako. Everyone was into blogging, di ba, nung days na yun. So, okay, I would have my own blog. Pero merong secret thing, like, you can actually put up your own news website and get it indexed on Google News. So, may traffic ka agad. Number 1 ka agad sa SERPs. So, I made a bit of money making news websites, running my news website, and dahil number 1 siya sa SERPs, doon ko na-experience yung first, high traffic website. So yung Bluehost ko, hindi siya gumagana, nagka-crash siya. Sometimes it would just like show up, like 500 error, database unable to connect. So doon ko na-explore yung VPS. So, nung time na yun, Linode, Slicehost. I think Linode is still around. So, sila yung DigitalOcean back then. Slicehost, Linode. So, I tried those and then that's how I got into Linux. So, infrastructure engineering. Okay, this is how you deploy servers. You have to run Apache or, okay, Apache doesn't work out, so maybe you can use Nginx. So, doon ko sila na-encounter yung time na yun. Running my own MySQL server, those things. College. So, nung time na yun, more of a templater, templating yung alam ko with WordPress, not so much of a programmer nung time na yun. So, I saw that news website and then, fourth year na ako nun, I didn't know what to do. So, I decided to drop out from college and I decided to learn Python. And since then, alam mo yun, stuck with Python and alam mo yun.
Yeah.
I
Let's
learned a few
pause a little
languages.
bit, no? Let's
Yeah.
pause a bit. You mentioned you were able to sell your website, your new site, no? How did you even find buyers for things like this? Was that something they approach you, or you actively were looking for a buyer at the time?
Nung time na yun, it was through a friend of a friend. So we were operating our news website, and this friend of mine had a brother who also wanted to operate their own news website. Tapos meron siyang Hungarian partner. And then I wanted to sell my website. So instead of building their own, they just bought mine.
It. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you dropped out, learned Python. Ito na.
Yeah. Python. Okay, so Python. I was picking between Ruby and Python. But what happened was I eventually used both. They're both great languages, I would say. Pero I just stuck with Python kasi I feel that it's much simpler. So Python, what happened? I built my first blogging engine. So I created a replica of WordPress, and that's what I used to get my first job. Before I got my first job, I joined the first startup weekend Manila. So, shout out to Butch Landingin, sila yung teammates ko nung time na yun. I really enjoyed that event. And after nun, yun yung first time ko to collaborate with other engineers. I think yun, like milestone yun in my life kasi before I would just code in my room. Pero ngayon, now I'm coding with other people. It's really different. Now you're actually using Git to, alam mo yun, collaborate with.
Yes.
So, it was a hackathon, a 3-day event where you would build a startup and by the end of it, you would pitch it. Hindi kami nanalo, but I made friends.
Yes.
So, key yun. So, after Startup Weekend Manila, so hindi naman ako hinire nung immediately, but I found this company called InSync. That's where I met my first mentor and my first boss. So, Terence Pua. So sila yung yun yung first company ko. I joined in. That's where I learned Ajax and JavaScript. So at the time, we were using Backbone.js. And yun, doon ko natutunan yung JavaScript side, state management. But we were still using jQuery technically at the time. We were using CherryPy. I didn't stay for too long kasi I wasn't really good with CSS and front end. Okay lang, but I learned. I think yung last 2 weeks ko doon kasi Steve, he's my mentor, Steve Samson. So, shout out Steve. Yung tinuro niya sa akin is to learn.
I-invite namin daw si Steve, to. Mention mo na dito. Invite ka dito,
Steve. Join
YoungCTO.
Next. Yeah, YoungCTO. Steve is really great. So I think yung key thing na natutunan ko from him is yung courage to learn new things. So nung last few weeks ko at InSync, medyo maluwag kami at the time. So yung ginagawa lang ni Steve was to code things as he learns new things. So that's where gumawa siya ng thing with Celery, gumawa siya ng thing with Redis, gumawa siya ng real-time chat. Sinabayan ko siya. And then that's where I found my courage to learn new things outside of like what I'm comfortable with. Hack lang, just build things, make it work, and then just find fun. So, lumakas yung loob ko kasi these are things beyond HTTP. So, like Redis, for example, now I'm doing pub/sub, or we even got to a point na nagko-code kami ng 0MQ. So, lumakas yung loob ko dun. I did freelancing after InSync, so na-realize ko na mas back-end yung forte ko. And then, I joined Startup Weekend Manila 3, and that's where I found my next boss, si Ross. Naging teammates ko sila. Shout out Ross. So, ito yung longest stint ko. So, I joined there as a software engineer at InfoShift. And then recently left actually just this year as their director of technology, previously the CTO. So what does InfoShift do? We do consulting. We build telco systems mostly. So I think yung InfoShift thing was my very formative years as ngayon, like myself. So that's where where we actually got to work on really high scale stuff, like we built Globe Labs, for example. So like high traffic API platform siya. And we maintained that long term. Actually, I think until now, we're still maintaining that platform. We got to work on really esoteric stuff like radios, SNMP for network monitoring, SMPP net flows. So things really outside of like the web engineering that I used to know. That's where I got it from sa InfoShift. And fast forward, now I'm here at Erudify, where we're doing financial systems naman. So it's a slight sidestep to what I'm used to doing.
Right. And you have a very colorful journey, no? And very varied, I would say, no? From not just web, but even telco, even networking. You have a lot of hands-on experience in that sense, no? So looking at all of your experience right now, would you consider yourself that your journey was quite successful? And in other words, how do you define success? What makes you successful after all these years?
Oh man, success. Honestly, I don't know how to define success, man.
It's okay, yeah.
Siguro like if you finish projects well, like that's how you should define success. Alam mo yun, like not really. If you finish your project, you ship it, and you make customers happy, I think that's success. And yun. That's I think my definition of success. In terms of like how I got here, I'm still in my journey. I'm still, alam mo yun. I think I shouldn't stop, and alam mo yun, there's marami pa akong bigas na kainin. That's what I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. And sorry, I'm gonna ask you a little bit now. I don't know if this is a question I should ask, but since a lot of our audience could be students, no, and you did mention that you dropped off college, has this, a diploma sometimes seems like it's a measure of success to some, no? That you have to have a degree, to some anyway, no? Did this in any way affect hiring for in your case, or did you even try to finish it, or you feel like this is you're already good, no?
Yung sinabi ni Terence, yung first boss ko, I asked him, should I, like continue my schooling part-time? Yung first job ko, so fresh out of school as a dropout, he specifically told me this, parang just pick a path and just run with it. And I mean, like I went with staying as a dropout. Yung thing about that is, I wouldn't say it would be a hindrance if you're actively coding, building things in your GitHub profile, you're active in the community, you share your knowledge, or not just, it doesn't have to be knowledge, you're just active there chatting with people. I think mas importante yun than a degree. Personally ngayon, if I'm hiring an engineer, we recently actually hired a really good engineer, pero senior high school graduate lang siya.
Oh, wow.
And he actually contributed features, and like the way he thinks is very different. He went back to school, but it was a really interesting and very interesting experience kasi it's rare to actually hire a senior high school student full time as a software engineer. So I wouldn't say like a degree is a limitation or a hindrance for you to actually get jobs, but ito yung caveat niya, if you're going to decide to drop out and tawag doon and start working, may disadvantage ka lang talaga. So you have to work extra harder than alam mo yun. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to our audience, no, we're not saying you should drop out, no. Just find yourself, no. Just find yourself. Yun yung sinasabi natin dito.
I agree. I'm gonna add to that. Like, yung na-realize ko looking back, yung school is a very formative. Yung school days ko is very formative to me as well. And I wish I finished my schooling, or at least, sana mas nag-focus ako sa schooling. Kasi yung skills na tinuturo doon is very important. Now, now that I'm working as a VP of engineering, like simple things like writing, communicating, those things, very important siya long term. Even yung critical thinking, or just doing the work, sitting down 8 hours a day, doing the work. Yun yung key things na makukuha mo out of college. I think college is important, and I wouldn't say it's a waste of money. I think you should pursue it. But if you think you're very confident about yourself na you can get a job now and not finish college, then I'd say, good luck to you. Like, I wish you all the best.
Right.
Just work hard.
Yeah. And as we wrap up, our last question here is more about your final advice to our viewers, or final shout outs that you might have to our viewers.
Should I say, like kung viewers, like students, just do the work. Like, just do the work. Alam mo yun, like sit down, write code, and alam mo yun, don't limit yourself too much in terms of like what you can do. You can do anything. If you feel like you can't do something because you don't understand it, sit down and try to understand it. Many times I've encountered this, hindi mo talaga may gets yung certain concepts in one sitting. Minsan babalik-balikan mo siya talaga. So don't give up.
Yeah. Do you practice what they call the rubber ducky method? Yung parang
I'm curious, what is that?
Yeah. So guys, if you haven't heard of that also, the rubber ducky method, actually you don't need to have a rubber duck, no? The rubber ducky method supposed to be is you are talking out loud. You are explaining the problem to something else, like to a young one. You can imagine it's a young person. That's why it's a rubber duck. And as you hear yourself explain, maybe you'll somehow find the answer, because you're externalizing it. When you're stuck now, you're externalizing it, and when you externalize, you hear it for yourself, and then there might be some ideas that come into it.
Fantastic advice, man.
Yeah,
I sometimes do that. Yeah, definitely. I do that. Hindi ko lang alam yung term for it. Talk to myself, yun yung tawag ko din. Like, I'm talking to myself while coding. Yeah.
Weird kasi, syempre, actually, mas common yung practice, you're talking to yourself, no? And just to avoid that, parang nababaliw na naman siya, kinakausap yung sarili niya. At least may external kang kinakausap, diba? Parang ganyan. So,
and may reason ka to, like, can tell them na I'm doing the rubber ducking method. Just so you know.
Right. No? Although, don't quote me on na exact term yun, no? Pero if you Google it, I think it shows up a lot. Right. All right. So thank you very much, Jess, for sharing your insights and thoughts on your journey for the youth, no? And some of our youth and IT are probably wondering more, like, exactly how can education be more affordable. So maybe you can also share a little bit more about what Bukas does, or what you guys offer, so that just in case that they're interested, they can reach out to you.
Sure. So you can visit us at Bukas.ph. So we're partnered with universities in the Philippines, but suppose that you're into data science, for example, you can go, we're partnered with Escuelabs. So we're not just limited to formal tertiary education. Meron din kaming um, after school things like yun. So if you're into data science and you're looking into upgrading your skills, you can go to Bukas.ph and see what Eskwelabs has to offer. So that's what we do. We make education more affordable by so imbes na magbabayad ka in one go in one semester, we spread it out longer um, for 12 more months. So, installment siya, equal payments. Tapos, mababa yung interest rates namin. So, hindi naman below consumer lending interest rates. So,
as you can see, guys, it's one way for you to afford IT or even non-IT education. No? If you want to pursue a particular path, you can then definitely go to Bukas for your financial request in that sense. All right. Thank you, everyone. And that wraps up our show. Okay, so goodbye and see you next time.
thanks for having me.
And of course, if you like our content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, and also that notification bell. Thank you.